all you Gretas and Shutescots out there. Welcome to Chapter 7, Notes, Section 3, How Can We Sustain Wild Species and Ecosystem Services? So the last section talked about all the things we're doing to mess it up, and then this section is how we can fix it. So one of the things we can do is enact and enforce national environmental laws and international treaties. So say, hey, this is what we're doing in the United States, and this is what we should be agreeing to worldwide. You can set aside protected lands. And then develop programs to either protect or breed captive species to maybe have them not go extinct. So cities, is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna. You're not going to have to know that big long name. Cities is fine. It was signed by 181 countries. It bans hunting, capturing, and selling of threatened and endangered species and products made from them. Protects about 35,000 species of plants and animals, although the enforcement varies from country to country. Countries can become exempt from protecting a species, especially if they benefit monetarily from killing it. And then most of the violations are going to happen in those non-participating countries, which isn't many. Then we have the Convention on Biological Diversity. This was signed by 193. As of 2015, we have not signed it. I don't think we have yet. CBD commits to reducing biodiversity loss and sharing the world's genetic resources. So this is just like, hey, we're going to try. It's not even like we're going to do this by this date. It's, hey, we're going to try to be less crappy. It includes efforts to control and prevent the spread of invader species. Once again, invasive species are bad, and focuses on saving whole ecosystems, not necessarily an individual species. And we're once again lacking enforcement and penalties for people who don't do what they said they were going to do. The Endangered Species Act was first passed in 1973. It's designed to identify and protect the endangered or threatened species in both the U.S. and abroad. It creates recovery plans. It can actually take a species off the list if it's no longer endangered. It looks at commercial wildlife trade, protects species on private lands. Friday notes. It is the most successful, far-reaching law. 3/4 of the listed species have recovery plans, and 99% of the species on the list have been saved from extinction. So it is working. Critical habitat, however, has increased significantly. And critics have been trying to weaken it, which it has been weakened in the last few years. Wild refuges can help protect species. The National Wildlife Refuge System was established by Teddy Roosevelt in 1903. By 2014, we had more than 560 in the system. Wetlands are protected, and in a lot of them, and that's going to help waterfowl like ducks and whatnot migration. And at least 1/4 of all of the endangered species live in one of these refuges. Unfortunately, activities harmful to wildlife, mining, oil drilling, use of off-road vehicles occurs in nearly 60% of those places. So once again, even though we have places that are supposed to be like safe zones for animals, humans are still being stupid. We can also work on preserving plant species. So we have these really cool in the Arctic. Every seed for every plant that has ever existed is safe up in these climate-controlled seed banks. So in the event of the apocalypse, we have seeds to restart everything. Botanical gardens contain living plants that represent 1/3 of Earth's plant species. And then arboretums will allow for the scientific study and public display of various species of trees and shrubs. If you've not gone to botanical gardens, they're really, really cool. I recommend finding one and going there. We also can have what are called captive breeding programs. So some endangered species are being preserved in zoos or aquariums. So you can pull the eggs, so pull them from the wild, hatch them in the zoo, and then there's a greater chance of them making it because there's no predators or whatnot. You can do captive breeding. Some of the wild species themselves are collected and bred in the zoos. And then you can have other techniques, artificial insemination, embryo transfer, use of incubators and cross-fostering, different ways to make babies happen. Commercial farming can help take the pressure off of wild populations of endangered species. So if you use aquaponics or aquaculture and you have a fish farm, then you don't need to fish in the ocean because you're growing them in a big swimming pool. A big issue with captive breeding is the genetic variation. So scientists estimate it takes about 10,000 or more of a critter, of a species, to maintain the species capacity for biological evolution. So once you are below 10,000, you can be considered genetically extinct because you're not going to be able to have the variation needed for that species to survive well. Zoos don't have the space or money to maintain those kinds of populations, and aquariums can offer displays, but they don't really serve as gene banks because, once again, they don't have space, they don't have the money. 10,000 of anything is a lot. So efforts to protect species raise some questions. So should the focus be to protect individual species or to protect the ecosystems and the services that they provide? How do we allocate limited resources between these two ideas? And how do we decide which species to protect, the ones that are the most threatened or the ones that are, say, a keystone species? So lots of questions and no real easy answers. We have lots of limitations, both financial and human resources. So is it more important to focus on protecting species we find appealing, like pandas are adorable, should we save them just because they're cute, or on species of ecological importance? We need to save the bees because pollination makes food. How do we determine which habitats are the most in need of protection? How do we allocate limited resources among those biodiversity hotspots? And then consumers, you guys, can help by avoiding products made from threatened or endangered species. So obviously you're probably not going to be wearing like panda bear boots or something, but make sure, say, the coffee you drink or the chocolate you consume comes from an area that was not cut down to make orangutans go endangered. So you've got options that you can do with your purchasing powers. And we are done. You survived yet again. So before we go, I want to take this opportunity to let each and every one of you know that you are good enough, you are smart enough, and that people like you. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good God, do your homework.